Our News on Terror segment tonight. Remember those CEOs who quit Trump's advisory council in a huff, claiming they were leaving because of Trump's inadequate response to the Charlottesville riot and racist violence? Well, last week we debunked that nonsense. Those CEOs were just virtue signaling, pretending they were leaving because they didn't want to be associated with Trump's response, when in reality, many liberal CEOs had already begun to leave because they weren't procuring the big government to big business favors they expected to receive by buddying up to Trump. They just couldn't say that, right? We're leaving because we're progressive elitists who wanted special favors, and President Trump is scaling back the size and scope of government instead of catering to our special interests. Well, it gets worse. Some of those preachy CEOs who quit in a moral huff are doing business with a nation that will shock you. With me now from the Washington Free Beacon, Adam Kredo. Adam, good to see you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Adam, you get to make the big reveal here. These preachy CEOs who pretended that they were so morally offended by Trump's response to Charlottesville, who exactly are they comfortable doing business with?
Well, they're comfortable doing business with Iran, the leading and foremost state sponsor of terrorism, a regime that is anti-Semitic, anti-Western, a regime that holds a Holocaust denial contest every year. Certainly not good people. And currently, as they're doing business, we have this nation building ballistic missiles, harassing our soldiers in the Persian Gulf, and essentially running operations in conjunction with the terror group Hezbollah in Syria that are directly targeting U.S. forces. And these companies all have business ties there and continue to explore ways to do business with Iran.
Right, which seems to be a little hypocritical when you look at it. So some of these companies, and yes, I'm going to name them by name here, it's Boeing, GE, General Electric, and Caterpillar. I mean, each of these three companies put out statements following Trump's response at Charlottesville that said that they condemn hate, that they couldn't be associated with such bigotry anymore. And this seems funny to me, Adam, because isn't there hate coming every day towards minorities, towards gay people, towards women, towards religious minorities, towards Jewish people? I mean, you run the gamut here of hate. Isn't all of that coming on a daily basis from Iran?
It really is, and those operative words there, I think, are important. Hatred and bigotry. The Iranian regime is one that hangs gay people from cranes, beats and imprisons and tortures its own people who dissent with the regime, spews hatred towards Israel, tries to kill Jews everywhere they live, has sponsored terror attacks that have killed U.S. soldiers, have killed American civilians, Israeli civilians, and continues to push forward on its nuclear work. This is a regime that covets nuclear weapons, not just so it can rule the region, but so, as they preach constantly, so they can destroy the West and kill and wipe Israel off the map.
Right, and those are their own words there. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, as well as they call America the great Satan here. Not exactly someone we should trust with nuclear weapons. By the way, fun fact, Iran also endorses David Duke, which is especially ironic given the fact that the left is all in a tizzy, and in a sense, rightfully so, but in a tizzy about this so-called movement of white supremacy that they claim is sweeping our nation. That's a topic for a different day because I think it's a very small, fringe minority, not a movement sweeping our nation, but doubly ironic that these companies don't call out Iran, that they're willing to take billions of dollars from Iran who actively spread this kind of hate. These three companies, and I single them out specifically because, Adam, didn't they refuse to sign a pledge? People have called them out before. Didn't they refuse to sign a pledge saying that they would no longer do business with Iran?
You're right. All three of them have refused to sign a pledge. It's a pledge that was sponsored by an advocacy organization known as United Against a Nuclear Iran. This is a watchdog group that, of course, tracks Iran's terror activity, that tracks Iran's behavior, that breaches the landmark nuclear deal. And it has asked a whole slew of companies, including these specific ones, to sign a pledge stating very simply, we will not do business with Iran because of its pursuit of nuclear weapons. And if that wasn't enough, because of its terror activity across the Middle East and really across the globe in Latin America and elsewhere. And these companies have been mum on that, but were very quick in their rush to condemn Donald Trump and their rush to distance themselves from the White House. So I do think it is fair to level accusations of hypocrisy when these companies, on one hand, say that they will never stand for hatred and bigotry, but are willing to work side by side with an enemy regime that is not at all their friend and certainly not a friend of America or Jewish individuals for that matter.
No, not at all. It's such a pathetic commentary on the character of these companies, too, these corporations. and the people who run them, because those are the people that are putting out the statements. I mean, what kind of frail morality switches every time the wind blows? They're basically jumping to one side when they think it might fill their pockets. They're behind Trump. They want to make America great. When they think that cozying up to Trump, would help them get favors to help them make a bigger profit, then when it's not advantageous anymore, they switch sides. But they won't make those same comments about Iran. Boeing in particular, I mean, this is particularly egregious, Adam. Boeing in particular is trying to sign a deal, a multi-billion-dollar deal, by the way, with Iran to help create new aircraft for Iran. I mean, we all know what Iran does with their commercial aircraft. They're not supposed to use them for military purposes, but they do.
You're absolutely right. In fact, they do. I wrote a piece recently about this, breaking the news from Congress that they're very concerned right now that Iran Air, this is the state-sponsored Iranian carrier that wants to do business with Boeing. Boeing is locked in this billion-dollar agreement with them, multi-billion-dollar agreement with them. Iran Air was recently caught shipping militants to Syria, where they're picking up arms in defense of Bashar al-Assad, the embattled president there. Now, this violates a whole host of things such as United Nations resolutions, and also really violates the nuclear deal. Iran is banned from using commercial aircraft in this manner, and essentially what Boeing wants to do is give them a brand new fleet of new pristine planes that we very well suspect will be used to continue shipping militants and continue ferrying weapons across the region. Iran Air and other carriers that are linked to the Iranian regime also have been caught shipping weapons over to Yemen and other hotspots. So this is behavior that they've been doing for quite some time, and we know in the past they've used Boeing airplanes that they got all the way back in the early 70s when trade was still legal with Iran.
Right. Like I said before, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they do business with someone who supports hatred and bigotry as long as it lines their pockets. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that makes 4 violations of the Iran nuke deal that Iran has partaken in since this deal began. Adam, we're out of time, but thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate it.